Hey guys, what's up? It's Monday. So once again, welcome to the Monday edition of the Breakfast Club. And once again, I have to ask you to forgive me for not making it last week, as well as this one being a recording, a vocal recording rather than a video recording. It's just been kind of crazy these past couple of weeks, and it's been getting harder and harder to, either find time to record or have a proper environment to record in. Though I will be doing my best to remedy that shortly. Anyway, something else I am going to have to apologize for is the following topic because I feel that it may be inflammatory to some. And I assure you that I am not trying to be inflammatory or offensive, but this is something that I felt needs some pointing out, or at the very least some discussion. Over the years, many, many years, when it comes to politics in the US and even just simply discussing ideology, things tend to get very, very heated, very, very partisan. And it seems that as the years roll on, there is like less and less common ground for people to, you know, share with one another. And their ideologies seem to be getting more and more sharply radical. Now, while I do want to point out that, to be honest, most people, when they're at least able to talk to each other, will find that they share more common ground than they think. And it's usually a rather loud minority that tends to be, shifting things or coloring the debate, so to speak. There is some truth to the fact that there seems to be more and more of a divide when it comes to, you know, political viewpoints and ideologies. However, I have noticed that when it comes to trying to figure out which one is more correct or right, so to speak, even though no side really has a monopoly on the truth, I have noticed that there tends to be a particular group of people who share a very similar type of philosophy simply because it happens to showcase their particular emotional and social development. And unfortunately, that development seems to be rather shallow. I'm sure all of us can remember a time, or, at least, remember a particular person, let's say in kindergarten or in first, second, third grade, elementary school, where someone who, tends to throw a particular temper tantrum or gets really angry because certain things don't go their way. And when they protest these things, they always do this, you know, they're kids. Kids tend to, be rather selfish and single-minded, a bit short-sighted, and some would even go so far as to say that until they reach a certain level of mental maturity, that they're somewhat sociopathic. But generally, everything tends to come from a particularly simple-minded, view of the world where everything pretty much revolves around them. And you can't really fault them for that because, they're still learning about the world around them. But when things don't go their way, or if they feel that everything's going against them somehow, they will rail against it and talk about how unfair it is. And, they feel that everything should, things should be catered to them. You know, because they're kids and that's the way they like it and that's the way it's got to be. This is why, toddlers throw temper tantrums. This is why, kids who are a little bit older, they won't necessarily throw temper tantrums, hopefully, but they're still going to try to argue and cajole things, make it go their way. And it's hard to get them to consider other people's feelings or other viewpoints for, why having a selfish attitude isn't the way to go about things. But as we get older and mature, we hopefully are given the tools to, get along more, better with people around us. We get better social skills. We get a greater understanding of what it means to be human. We, are basically given the tools to be productive members of society. And hopefully we're able to get these tools from our parents, teachers, other elders, things like that. But lately it seems that there's more and more people who just haven't been given these tools. For whatever reason. Maybe they didn't have good parents, or maybe they didn't have parents at all. Maybe they came from a messed up upbringing. There could be a variety of reasons. Maybe they're just hard-headed. I can't really predict what these things are. I'm not learned enough to try to come up with proper guesses, but there seems to be more and more people growing up who just don't seem to have these tools. They don't have these, they don't have the social maturity to be able to get along with others or understand their feelings. They don't have the proper empathy for others. They don't have a deeper understanding of why it is that a completely selfish attitude of me, mine isn't necessarily a good one. And because of this lack of understanding and not having the mental maturity or the social maturity or whatever other terms you want to use, because they don't have these things that helps them to become functioning adults, they flounder. They wander aimlessly, through life. They can't seem to get a break. They can't seem to get a decent job. They can't seem to be able to, make things work. And because of the way they view the world, because the way they view the world hasn't properly matured, it's everyone else's fault but their own. And, first when you're younger, it's always, the grown-ups' fault because you're a kid. And the grown-ups are always the ones who seem to be standing in your way. So it's like, it's mom and dad's fault. I hate them. When you're a kid, that's how you put things, But when you become an adult and you have more quote-unquote sophisticated targets, it ceases to be, just the grown-ups who are your enemy or supposedly the ones who are responsible for your world not working the way you want. Now it's, the minorities. Now it's women. Now it's the gays, or worse, if you happen to be more conspiritually minded, now it's, the leftists and their cults and universities. Now it's, it's the government. It's the Jews. It's it's the Illuminati or whatever BS ghosts that people tend to come up with. This huge generalization of who they think is responsible for the fact that they're not living a life of luxury and driving around in Lamborghinis. And unfortunately, there are ideologies that cater to this sort of mindset. There are people who will take advantage of this particular mindset in order to make their bread. There are people who will take advantage of it simply because they want a huge following. And to be fair, there are some people who they happen to come with an ideology that isn't necessarily because they're trying to cater to these people, but simply because they have themselves a rather selfish point of view. Maybe not as completely selfish as the people who follow them, but a self-centered one nonetheless. And people like this gravitate towards stuff like that because it sounds so easy. I really am exceptional. I really am not a loser. It's just the fact that these other people are holding me back. If I can somehow get these people off my back, then I can flourish. Never mind the fact that if they were capable of flourishing, no one would be standing in their way to begin with. They would still find some way to, get past. They'd still find some way to make it. Like, say what you want about certain criminals living in poverty, but they're at least able to come up with some type of hustle to be able to put food on the table. How is it that many of these people who happen to be living in more suburban type areas can't seem to make it? And they're not living in a situation that's nearly as bad. To be fair, there are, of course, exceptions. I'm speaking as someone who used to live in the Midwest, and I've seen the despair that's out there. It still is mind-blowing to me, just how screwed up, places in the Midwest have become when it comes to opportunity. There's a reason why people out there are angry and upset and disturbed, because it seems to be less and less opportunity for them. And people who are desperate or who are despairing will end up, reaching for any particular solution or ideology or person that offers them a way out. But this isn't to say that people who are a little bit more mature of mind can't find some way to be able to deal with the struggle and find some way to be able to overcome it. And a lot of people simply don't have that particular attitude to be able to do it. So they tend to lean toward ideologies or political points of view, which basically states that it's everyone else's fault but their own, and if only they can find some way to suppress these people or get rid of these people, things will be better. They don't necessarily offer any solutions to the problems that are surrounding them, just, it's these people. Now, this of course is a bit of a generalization. If you go to almost every ideology, you will find that just about everybody's got somebody to point at for reasons, for the reasons that things need to be screwed up. With varying degrees of truth to it. But the ideologies I tend to respect tend to be the ones that don't just simply point fingers at people, but also try to offer some form of solutions to make sure that the solution will benefit everyone and not necessarily just give the undesirable people the boot. Rather, it's more like trying to show them a better way of life instead of, oh, we just got to get rid of these guys or suppress them. It also stands to reason that the ideologies that seem to offer, at least in my opinion, a better way or better solutions also tend to be the ones that lean more toward true critical thinking. It seems kind of odd to me, for instance, that those that claim to be all about rational thought and scientific thought are also the same people that happen to be against the intelligence, community. Like people, the intellectuals, those who are in education, those who happen to be seriously contemplating, things in colleges and such. I find that many of the people who claim to be rational tend to be against universities, saying that they all are parts of cults of personalities or they're all, taken over by Marxists and leftists, despite the fact that many of the people they're pointing at probably aren't Marxists at all. If your ideology finds itself against those who actually happen to have intelligence, maybe you need to recheck your ideology. I'm just saying. I'm not saying that everybody in the realm of intelligentsia are always correct. There are plenty of examples of, times when when intellectuals get it wrong, or worse, are actually working against the masses' best interests. There's lots of examples of this. However, 9 times out of 10, if you're somebody who doesn't really know much about anything, you haven't done research in any of the particular topics that you happen to be arguing about, you haven't studied history, you haven't studied any of the social sciences, you haven't at the very least looked into the various studies or actual research, done and ongoing on these topics, but yet you seem to have strong opinions about them, and all your opinions lead you to go and say that, oh, the experts all got it wrong, it's more likely that you do. And if you especially find yourself getting mad because somebody intelligent is pointing out something that you yourself don't like because it somehow hurts your feelings or your ego, you might want to second guess the conclusion that you come to if you're just lashing out because you're angry at those findings. But this leads back to what I said in the beginning. Those who have a certain selfish attitude, those who aren't mentally or emotionally mature, are going to have a really hard time adjusting to such facts. They're going to have a really hard time adjusting to such things. It's a hell of a lot easier to just throw a tantrum and then basically say, no, you're the one at fault. You're the one who's keeping me from being able to excel in the world. You guys are making it so that I'm the bad guy and I can't do anything. Forgetting the fact, of course, that there are plenty of people who look just like them who are getting along just fine in society. And many of those people also happen to be the ones who are disagreeing with them. Not out of any sort of conspiracy, but simply because, well, the people they're arguing with, the reason why they're disagreeing with them is because they're wrong. Point blank. Or at the very least, just don't have much evidence to back up their ideological claims. They're rather selfish and self-centered claims. If I'm going to put it very bluntly, and might as well, get all the angry comments sent at me, I might as well say this. If you happen to be a loser in life, it's not because everyone else is against you. And I'm finding that many people who are unfortunately losing at life tend to gravitate toward ideologies that basically say, oh, it's not your fault you're a loser, it's everybody else's. It's not everybody else's fault that it's hard for you to get a job or, move out of the situation that you're in. And this is coming from somebody who understands that there's certain systematic things in our culture and in our country right now that do screw us over. There is something to the effect that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. But there's a limit to how much it can screw you up. Can it screw you up to the point where it's going to be hard for you to get rich yourself? Yeah. However, is it going to stop you from, say, making friends or finding a mate? At least getting a job that at the very least can put some food on the table? They're not necessarily going to stop you from that. There'll always be some way to, at the very least, get some type of stuff going. The question is, are you able to put the work in, and are you able to put the effort in? Are you willing to suffer for it? Are you going to be doing more than just simply saying, oh, by virtue of being me, I should be able to just get this stuff? You got to put some effort in. And you also have to be willing to reach out to people who may be different from you to help you out. It isn't just going to be given to you. You have to give a bit to get a bit. If your ideology is basically saying that just by virtue of who you are, you should just be getting, there's probably something wrong with the ideology. Especially if what you're thinking is supposed to earn you what you got is something that you couldn't help but be by virtue of your birth. Just saying. This has gone long enough. Hope this gets, hope this, at least worth your time and get some decent thinking going and, some discussion going. And I'll catch you guys later.